few minutes for people to jump into to the call here. We also have a live stream on Facebook right now. I'm going to give a couple of minutes for everybody to hop in, and this call is also being recorded, so we'll be able to share this with our coaching members who were not able to be on the call or who for some reason missed it in the live stream. We are here today with John Ruhlin. John is the founder and the CEO of the Ruhlin Group, which is a firm that specializes in high-level gifting, relationship building, and new client acquisition. John is also a prolific speaker, keynote speaker on the topics of C-level selling, relationship developing, and strategic gifting. John is the co-author of the book, The Cutting Edge Sales, and most recently, he's the author of the book Giftology, which is worth its weight in gold. You've got to get this book and read it and implement it. And John is a friend of mine, and it's somebody who is probably the most connected human being that I've ever met. I would go as far as to say that John might just be 2 phone calls away from anyone in the world. And the most impressive thing about John is that John is the number 1 rep, the number 1 salesperson for Cutco in history. That's out of 1.5 million salespeople who have sold Cutco knives. John is the number 1 rep in history. We all think the mortgage business is tough, getting realtors to send us deals. Imagine selling $1,000 knife sets door to door and being better than 1.5 million other people all time. So without further ado, John Ruhlin, go ahead and introduce yourself and fill in the gaps from that intro, and happy to have you here, buddy.
Mike, man, thanks for having me. Thanks for that interview. I should be floating now. I don't know that I don't think you left much on the gap side of things.
No, I try not to.
Yeah, I'd say, most importantly, I'm a dad of 3 little girls, 6, 4, and 2, and I got a wife that keeps me in line and supports me and really is my rock, Lindsay. And we're living near her family farm of like 4,000 acres. That's why I'm in St. Louis. People are like, they see the 330 area code and they're like, I thought you were an Ohio farm boy. And I'm like, I am. I still have my 330, but I relocated. Most of my staff and team is still back in Ohio. We have some people in Chicago too, but yeah, man, it's been a wild 17-year journey to get to, and we've known each other for a couple of years, but it's been a wild ride, both in the Cutco world and in the gift world.
Yeah. So, John, before we get started, I just want to throw out a disclaimer that I mentioned that John runs a company that specializes in gifting. And some of you on this call your immediate response is probably something like, wait a second, we can't give gifts. RESPA prevents us from giving gifts as loan officers. And so I want to put a disclaimer out there that there's a distinction to be made around giving something of value in exchange for a referral, right? Which is what the rules and the regulations are written around, and providing value to drive a relationship, right? And I think John put it best when I was talking to him about this yesterday. And I said, hey, how do we get around this RESPA rule that says we can't give something of value? And John says, well, I never recommend giving anything in exchange for a referral, right? Because we're in a relationship business, and what that does is that makes it a transactional business. And so I think that's really well put. There's going to certainly be some nuances to incorporate some of the strategies and principles that we talk about today, but it's certainly something that we can do in our business when done right and can make a huge difference. John, you mentioned something in your book that says how you love and treat people will open more doors than you can possibly imagine. And I'd love it if you could just take a minute and tell us, what do you mean by that? What might be an example of that? And how might we incorporate that into our lives as salespeople?
Yeah. Well, thanks for the disclaimer. Obviously, everybody has to do their own research. I'm going to speak very candidly to people because a lot of times people, whether you're in mortgage, whether you're in wealth management, every industry under the sun comes back to me and says, oh, we can't do gifts. And I'm like, first off, yes, you can. If you do it right, you do it well. So I call BS. I don't care what industry. Now, you may have a client or two like a Walmart that can't take a pencil, but the simple fact is that one of our most powerful tools is the handwritten note. And that costs you next to nothing. In our case, we spend $9 on our letterhead, so ours costs a few dollars. But anybody, even the government, the federal government, can receive really thoughtful handwritten notes, and we can dive into that a little bit more. But the idea around a lot of times people, when they hear giftology or they hear gifting or gift strategy, they're like, especially the type A sales guys are like, who cares about gifts? The gifting doesn't return an ROI. It's just a warm, fuzzy feeling. And I would agree with you. Like if you do gifting like most people do with gift cards and whatever else, like if you show gratitude to your most important relationships and you think $1 million relationship is worth a $100 Starbucks gift card, then you're right. It sucks. It's not going to do anything for your business. But we all, I don't care what level you are, even billionaires are starved for connection. We're starved for gratitude and appreciation and those sorts of things. If you do gifting at that level where you're like loving on somebody that you could give to a billionaire and they would still cry and they would still get deep, that's the level of gifting that we're talking about. And whether you're talking about an assistant or secretary or janitor, or whether you're talking about a $1 billion company, everybody would say relationships matter, but most people, most sales reps, most leaders suck at showing gratitude like they mean it. They suck showing gratitude to their spouse. They suck at showing gratitude to their employees. Like if you were honest with yourself and you ask people around you, am I great at showing, not feeling or talking about gratitude? Because everybody, it's a cool thing right now to talk, hey, I got my 5-minute journal, which is really important. But it's one thing to talk about gratitude. It's another thing to do gratitude, to do it like you mean it. And when your spouse feels gratitude, that they really matter, your relationship thrives. When your employees say, wow, this person really cares about me and is willing to put it in a tangible item and say thank you, that really makes a difference on that level of loyalty. And so at a core level, that's what we're talking about in teaching. And most people say, well, I send my employees a canteen. Really? Is that what they're worth to you? A canteen? Like that should be just like an everyday occurrence. It's not a once a year at Christmas type thing. And so I think that people have mistaken what gifting and what promotional items are, and they've overlapped them. And I feel like it's our job to call people out on that and be honest.
Wow, that's so true, right? It's so true. Everybody gives the gift at Christmas time, or when everybody else is giving a gift, or gives the branded, whatever it is, a calculator or a water bottle or something that's branded with our company on it, like somebody else wants to carry that around. And so, yeah. John, I know you told me one time, and you write about this in your book, and I know you teach this as well, that there's a right and a wrong way to gift. And can you give us some examples of that? And what might be the wrong way to gift, and what the right way to gift is?
Well, I see people do things in their business that they would never do in their personal lives. Even the most tacky, marketing-minded people on the planet would never go to a wedding and say, imagine I'm going to your wedding, Mike, and I'm like, man, I'm going to get him this beautiful Tiffany's vase, spend like $250. And on the side of this Tiffany's vase, I'm going to put compliments of John and Lindsay Ruhlin. And I'm going to hand it to you. Like, would anybody, even Donald Trump wouldn't do that. Like, and he's Mr. Brand everywhere. And I'm not going to get political and tell you whether I'm Republican or Democrat, but even Donald Trump wouldn't do that. Yet in business, we do that all the time. We hand out this beautiful, like, Under Armour polo, and on the chest of it, we put a logo the size of a softball, and we're calling it a gift. Like, a gift by its very nature is recipient focused. It's all about them, their preferences, their size, their colors. And yet in most businesses, I don't care if you're in real estate, I don't care if you're, even pro sports teams, they overbrand themselves. And this year we'll send out $350,000 in gifts to me personally, I will. $350,000 just to go out to our clients, prospects, interesting people we meet, whatever. I don't send one thing out, and I mean zero, that has my logo on it. Not Giftology, not Ruhlin Group, not Ruhlin Partners. Like, we own a number of businesses. I don't send anything out. And the reason is that when somebody receives something and it has their logo on it, you've tried to turn them into a billboard. And your goal was to try to do that and deepen the relationship, and you end up doing neither. Because the person's going to take that item, and they may say thank you just to be polite, but in their head they're thinking, really, am I ever going to use this? Then they take it home and they show their wife or husband, and they're like, that's the tackiest thing in the world. We're never going to use those. Maybe we'll wash the car with that sweatshirt or that blanket with their logo on it, but they're never going to use it. So you end up spending money to have a negative thought and an impression, and then it ends up in the landfill somewhere or Goodwill. Like, that is just like, it's accomplishing nothing of what you want. In fact, it's de-accomplishing things. And yet billions of dollars get spent that way every year. And we call it marketing, and it's not marketing. It's killing your business.
Wow. So John, let me put you on the spot with that, because you're a Cutco guy. In fact, your company grew out of the fact that you became so prolific at Cutco. And you turned it into gifting. And so all of us in the mortgage business, we're pretty familiar with the Cutco closing gifts, right? We all have those people in our lives. Many of us are giving Cutco closing gifts, and we're branding those knives, we're engraving those knives with our name, our phone number, and our information on them. Should we not be doing that? Should we be doing something differently?
If you're part of the 99% of people that suck at follow-up with clients and relationships and referral partners and centers of influence, by all means, give a great gift like Cutco and put your name, your cell phone number. If you're only going to talk to them once a year, but if you're part of the 1% that's world-class as a realtor or world-class as a mortgage broker, then guess what? You have touches that go throughout the entire 12 months of the year. If you give somebody a Rolex, do you need to put your logo on it? Like 10 years from now, I look at my Rolex like, man, I don't remember that Cutco gave this to me. Like, I remember they don't have to put the Cutco logo on the face of the watch. If you give a world-class item and you follow up with people in general and you stay in touch with people, absolutely not. Do not put your logo on it. Do not put your cell phone number. Like, if somebody wants to get a hold of me, like, they can Google my name and find my cell phone number. Like, if they remember Giftology, like, no logo. Put their name on it, their spouse's name, their family name, maybe their favorite quote of the Bible verse or a book that they read. Make it all about them, but absolutely positively not. I'd still give out of that $350,000, probably $200,000 of it is Cutco. So I love the product Cutco. And for the masses of people that are doing transactional business, by all means, throw your logo on it. But if you're part of the 1%, no logo, only their name or nothing. Make it all about them.
Make it all about them, and then continue to follow up. And the idea is that if you stay in their lives in other ways, right, that they're going to remember that you gave them that knife. They're not going to have to look at the knife and be reminded of who gave it to them. They're going to know automatically who gave them the knife. Absolutely.
So let's take, for a mortgage broker, the whole referral thing. If I was a mortgage broker, I'd take the top 100 realtors that I have a relationship with or that I'd want to have a relationship with, and I would take and send them once a quarter. I'd send them a different knife around carving out time or being cutting edge or whatever the theme that they wanted to have. But a lot of times people give one gift and then they're done. There's no ongoing relationship building. My biggest clients that I've received, like a Jeffrey Gitomer, who's one of the top sales authors on the planet, I wanted to get his attention after I met him, and I wanted him to become a referral source, a mentor, an advisor, and I knew I couldn't afford him. So I sent him a Cutco Ultimate Block. It's a 32-piece knife set. And every month, I would send him 1 to 3 knives around different themes for 18 straight months. So I was in front of him. So now he has this huge $3,000-$4,000 set sitting on his countertop. He never can forget me. I didn't put my logo on one single piece of that. I made it all about him. You think he forgot where the $3,000 knife set came from? No. Like, we just talked last week. He's referring me clients in New York City. Like when I spoke at Google, like, he is in my corner. But a lot of times people give one knife and then they're done. And they never to heard of again. Like, that's not real relationship building. That's transactional business. And if I was building relationships with realtors, I would send them something every single quarter, whether it's building a knife set or something else. I wouldn't wait for a referral to happen. I would be inspiring referrals to happen to where there's so much reciprocity on one side that it has to eventually come back to me in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes that's with deals. Sometimes that's with any number of things. So it's not like I'm holding it over their head. Hey, I've sent you 6 gifts in a row. You better do business with me. But God's wired us all to want to reciprocate. That's just in our DNA. And so a lot of times people, they wait for things to happen. They reward like carrot and stick. Like, people, like, your best realtors that have deal flow coming out the ears are not motivated by your Starbucks gift card or your Cutco knife. Do they like them? Maybe. But if you gave somebody something over and over and over again, guess what? You're the most top of mind because they're opening packages that are personalized to them. At some point, a good percentage of those realtors, if you're good, now, like, you can't be or not have good customer service and then give great gifts and expect to get great deals. Like, a lot of times people reach out to us and like, I'm really struggling. I need to give gifts. I'm like, no, you don't. You need to go like call some people back and go work a little bit harder. And then once things are dialed in, then you reach out to our firm and we'll add like the little sprinkles on top of the sundae. Like, the gifts aren't the entire business. They're just one little element that people oftentimes brag about, and they feel a certain way, and then they'll reciprocate or they'll want to pour back into you because you're just as good as everybody else. You just happen to be nicer than them. all your competitors. And that's really what we're showing is the gift doesn't matter about the gift. It's just delivering an emotion to that other person. And that's where people kind of get confused of trying to combine marketing and all these other things and they end up accomplishing none of it.
Yeah, it made me think of so many things that I remember from your book, where you talked about, are we doing a promotion or are we giving a gift, right? And that distinction between the promotion and the gift, I think, is everything that you just talked about. Yep. And you also said something that really always struck true with me was that the gift is the symbol of the relationship, right? And if we don't have a relationship, that the gift that we choose to give should be a symbol of the relationship that we want. And I'll carry that a step forward and say that the gift doesn't always have to be to the person whose attention we want, right? And I know you use this more than anything because you're going after billionaires. And what do you give a billionaire, right? You can't give a billionaire much. So What do? You uncover the inner circle and you become part of the inner circle and you take care of the inner circle. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe share an anecdote or a story about how that works or something cool that we could benefit from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I out of that $350,000 in gifts I personally send, 80% of that is directed at the inner circle. Because if I'm trying to target you or another executive, like when you fly, you get to fly first class or private sometimes, or you stay at the Four Seasons, like you get nice things when you travel. And I do too. And so do most executives. I don't care if guy or gal, like they get treated well. And so if they're into bourbon, people send them bourbon all the time. If they're into wine, they send them wine all the time. The person who gets the worst side of being in business is my team. I have 3, assistants, people that are my right hands. My wife, she's taking care of 3 little kids under 6. When they're sick, like they're sick this week, there's like, man, it's coming out of both ends. I'm getting like treated really well. She's getting treated like crap. And so our kids, my kids, when I travel away, they hate being away from me and I hate being away from them. So I focus all of my energy on the gifting at the family, the inner circle, the assistant, the team. And so a great example of this, a dream of mine was to get an NBA team as a client. I'm a huge basketball guy. And at the time we were working with some NFL teams and some NHL teams, but no NBA. And I'm like, man. So I get a phone call randomly and it's, hey, this is Cheyenne. I'm the assistant to the CEO, Alex Martins of the Orlando Magic. And I'm like, holy crap. At first I thought one of my buddies was punking me. So I'm like, no way somebody's calling randomly out of the blue saying, hey, this is Cheyenne and I want to order 200, knife sets to give out to the NBA. I'm like, yeah, right. In my head, I'm thinking, yeah, right. I played along. Turned out it was a real deal. And so they started ordering gifts for not only their suite partners and sponsors, but they also started ordering it for other key relationships in the NBA. And every time, once a quarter, I would send a gift to Alex Martins, the CEO, because he's the one signing the check. That's how most people think. But what I also did was I sent a gift to Cheyenne. And same gift or nicer. Not like I sent Alex a $1,000 gift and I sent Cheyenne like a $50 gift. That's how most people do gifting. Like I'm going to send the big person a really nice gift. And I'm going to send all his underlings or all of her underlings something like just a token. Big, stupid mistake. So we send the same or nicer. 3 years go by. I want to get time with Alex. She's like, no problem. I'll make it happen. So I'm thinking, and she called me back and was like, clear your afternoon. So I'm thinking I'm getting hours with Alex. We're going to be boys by the end of this brainstorming session. So excited. So I go in, meet Alex. 5 minutes later, he's gone. I'm like, why did I cancel all these meetings? And Cheyenne showed me to the boardroom, and it was 6 of the department heads, like, sponsorship, suites, tickets. Long story short, when I walked in, normally like a lot of pro sports teams, like, there might be that, arrogance or the wall goes up or like kiss the ring kind of a feel. Like they gave me hugs. They're like, John, what can we buy from you? It was the most amazing like conversation. And we walked away from that with our first 6-figure deal with a pro sports team. Not because of Alex, the decision maker. You guys all have probably realtor offices or realtors. Oh, they're the rainmaker. Wrong move to try to just take care of them. All the people around them. I took care of Cheyenne and didn't ask for anything in return. She was the one that pitched them for 2.5 years that you better do business with John. Here's what John just did. Here's what Ruhlin Group did. Better giftology. Like she became my internal advocate and salesperson. And so I've had that happen hundreds of times where somebody's wife, husband, assistant, kids, you name it, or even pets, taking care of somebody's pet. You take care of that inner circle, and over time, if you do it with the right intentions, intention matters, and you don't ask for things from those people, when over time you make those deposits, eventually that comes back. And oftentimes it comes back 5x, 10x, sometimes 100x. And so the inner circle is magical. And most people, like, they completely pass it up and like, I'm going to take Mr. Big Shot golfing. Well, he's going to go golfing 100 times this year. I'm going to take him out to a steak dinner. Who cares? I'm going to take her to a Broadway show. She goes to them all the time. Take care of the inner circle. That's where your dollar goes furthest.
Yeah, that makes such sense. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk calls the economy that we live in the attention arbitrage economy, right?
Yep.
And so things like Facebook, I do almost all of my prospecting on Facebook, find people that I need to meet, find other people that I know that know them, build a bridge in sideways, right? And that's one part of doing it. But everybody else is going after that same attention. So how do we get the attention of the people that we want it from? Obviously, gift giving is part of that. I know a lot of people on this call or who are watching this or listening to this at some point in the future are saying to themselves, well, gift giving is awesome. And it's great that John gets to give, you know, $350,000 a year in gifts, but I can't afford that. I don't have any money or very, very little money to spend on gifts. And so, John, I'm wondering, in that situation, what would you do? And I've heard you say before you answer, let me say this. I've heard you say before that where everybody else goes expensive, you go cheap. And where everybody else goes cheap, you go expensive, right?
Yep.
But the relative nature of how expensive that is, it fits within a small budget. So tell us how that might work and how we could grab the attention of the prospects we're looking to grab the attention from without having to spend thousands of dollars that we might not have, or some of us might not have at this point in our careers.
Yeah. Well, I think that I started the gifting that I did with $500 a month when I was in college. And $500 a month in college, when you're paying for school as you're going along and working full time, and I was at a private university. So I would say that most people would say, oh, I can't afford it, so they don't do anything. Or they're spending money on trade shows or advertising or other things. Maybe a fancy car. I don't know. They're spending money somewhere. And they're, you know, like oftentimes I would invest, you know, a couple $100s in one gift, because I'd rather take care of one person that was really, really important, whether it was a client, prospect, whatever else. Like I'd find, you know, an insurance company that I'd want to meet, $200 million company. I would invest $250 in a carving set, engrave the CEO's name, spouse's name, family name, and I'd send it off, and it would say, a little handwritten notes inside said, carve out 5 minutes for me. I promise it'll be worth your time. And oftentimes, not every time, oftentimes I'd get the meeting. I go in the meeting and explain to him. He's like, you know, first off, he's expecting somebody in like their 50s, like a seasoned sales executive. When you gift like a king, you get treated like a king. People have expectations. Like I've had many people, like yesterday, I met with the CEO of a big casino. And when I walked into the restaurant, he's like, man, I thought you'd be like double your age. Like I was expecting some like, you know, white hair guy walking in, and, you know, I'm not exactly a spring chicken anymore, but I'm 37. And, you know, at the time when I started doing this, I was 20. So I'm 20 years old, 17 years ago, investing $250. But I would oftentimes get the meeting, or after a meeting, even if it was a 15-minute meeting, I would thank somebody for their most valuable asset that they gave me, not their deal, not their referral. They gave me 15 minutes of their time. They can never get that back to spend with their kids, their business, anything else. And I sent them a $200 gift just thanking them for carving out the time. It would freak people out. And it still does to this day. I'll send people gifts all the time, not for anything other than just because is one reason, or their time. They gave me their time, period. And so what I would say is, somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, you should be writing a lot of notes on the nicest paper that you can afford. Like our letterhead is $9. And it's because very few people get handwritten notes anymore. And those that do, it's oftentimes generic on generic paper. When somebody gets a handwritten note from us, it's on a piece of steel written on with a Sharpie.
Each piece of paper that you use is $9?
It is $9.
So every note is $9?
Every note, well, with the shipping and the envelope and everything, it's $12.
Wow. And I bet you shipping. Nobody else is doing that, right?
We had, you know, you always get copycats, which is flattering. Like that's fine. Like there's probably a few dozen people that do it now. Most people, it's like the cards. I was with somebody this morning, and great marketing guy. He's like, man, he copied and got the metal business cards that cost $3-4 each. And he's like, I'm very discerning about who I hand them out to. And I'm like, I hand mine out like they're candy. And his jaw hit the ground. He's like, you're right. We're supposed to have this abundance mindset, and I can't hand $3 to somebody without discerning whether it's the right person or not. I'm like, I hand the same. I'm like, I know. I hand the same card to the janitor, the marketing director, or the CEO of $1 million company or a $20 billion company. And oftentimes you have no idea who that person is and who they're going to pass it around to. And oftentimes the mid-level people pass it around 20 times more. And so the letterhead, spending $9, people spend $9 on a flashlight and they think they're being cute. Like, oh, I want to light up your life, or, whatever, like, you're in the darkness, we're going to help lead you the way. I'm like, screw that. Like, everybody's handing out $9 flashlights. I'm going to hand out a $3 business card or a $9 piece of letterhead, because that's Seth Godin's concept of being remarkable. It's a purple cow. It's taking something insignificant and making it very significant. And we do the same thing with gifts. Most people say, what should they spend on a gift? I'm like, I don't know, $20. And I say, screw that, multiply it times 10, and you're more in the right ballpark of spending $200 when everybody else is spending 20 or 2. That's how you're remarkable. And so I would say that you don't have to spend the most money, but as an entrepreneur, as a sales rep, we have to take the limited resources that we have, whether that's $1,000 a year or $1 million a year. Because oftentimes the companies that we're working with, they might be a $100 million company, but they're going up against somebody that's $1 billion company. So it doesn't matter. Most of the time, you're not able to spend an unlimited resource. And so whether you're a sales rep spending your first $200 on a gift, or $20 or whatever the number is, or $9 on a letterhead, everybody plays the, oh, woe is me, I don't have enough money to do gifts the way you do, John. And I'm like, that's crap. That's like a limiting belief in your head that does not exist. You can start wherever you're at. And even if it's with no gifts and it's just letterhead, a powerful thing to take that letterhead and make it even more more powerful, as you know, is you write the really thoughtful hour-long thank you note, and then you go take it to them and hand deliver it to them and read it to them in person. You'll feel more grateful and more gratitude, and your happiness will rise. And almost guaranteed, they're probably going to shed some tears, and they're going to have more gratitude. And it costs you your time, your energy, and if you go stupidly crazy with the letterhead like we do, it's $9. So it's not the money.
It just made me think. I was thinking the one thing that you can give that is not written into the regulations as being of value is your time, right? And meanwhile, that's the most valuable thing that you have to give. So giving your time with the $9 letterhead is a no-brainer. I love that idea. Yeah. John, let me shift gears and talk to you. I want to talk to you just about a couple more things. And I think the right place to go now is talking, because of the time of year that we're in, is talking about when we should give, right? When is it appropriate to give? When is it appropriate to not give? How often? What are the general best practices around, timelines and things of that nature?
Yeah. So if you take anything away from this, most people get excited, like, oh, it's the holidays, and whether they're religious or not, they're like, yay, it's Christmas, and we're going to send, everybody starts to feel generous. Like, oh, we made money this year, we probably should say thank you once a year. And I'm like, the worst, and I mean the worst time to send a gift is when it's expected. And guess when it's expected? At the holidays. So as a gifting company, out of that $350,000, as soon as Thanksgiving arrives, there's a vault that shuts. We don't send one gift to our relationships. Not one. We're a gifting company. And most gifting companies, most retailers, most people selling crap in general, they go from being in the red to being in the black because of Christmas. And we're out there preaching the gospel of don't send gifts at Christmas. And people think we're committing Harry-Carry. Like, are you an idiot? Like, how much money you're losing? And I'm like, here's why. I don't want you as my client to spend money any differently than I would personally spend money. So you should be saying thank you year round, but avoiding the times that expected. So no birthdays, no anniversaries, no Christmas. Send gifts just because. So for our most important relationships, minimum 250 to 300 relationships, we'll send things once a quarter. But we avoid times that are expected. So if one year we do Valentine's Day around loving working with them, the next year we'll do St. Patrick's Day. We are always constantly keeping them guessing, because guess what? If you give one of your employees a bonus every single year and it's $1,000, what happens to that $1,000? Number one, it gets forgotten about, right? Because it's like, and it becomes part of the compensation. It becomes part of the compensation. So you only lose if you stop giving it. You don't gain anything by giving it. It's just part of their salary. And gifts are the same way. It's like, oh, we have this tradition. We send bottles of wine or bourbon or ham or, go down the list. I'm like, you're sending it when everybody else is. And so most people have this like conference table that's ready to collapse from all the crap that they're getting, chocolate and nuts and hams and turkeys and wine. And it's one of 50 things they received. If you want to be different, don't give gifts when everybody else does. Give gifts in the middle of the summer. Give gifts, and don't make it some like cheesy like baseball. For baseball season, send something significant, but do it at a time when it's unexpected. 0 holiday gifts. They won't miss them. And if they do, send them a gift at the end of January. It'll be the only thing that they receive, and your dollar will actually produce real dollars back to you. Like when somebody gives me $1, I want to give them back $3. I can't do that if I encourage them to give gifts when everybody else does. It's a simple concept. Timing matters massively.
Yeah, that's so important. That's so important. And it's great to not have to give everybody Christmas gifts, right? It's convenient.
It is, but it's saving up your budget to go do something thoughtful and meaningful
in January, at the end of January. Exactly.
Yeah,
John, how, so we all have prospects that we're trying to sell, right? We're all going after realtors and builders, trying to build relationships with them, get them to send us referrals. But we also have large internal teams. So some of us have large teams of people who work directly for us, assistants and junior loan officers and processors. Others just have the company that we're housed under, the underwriters and the processors that are working on the loans that we bring in the door. How can we create a system of gifting internally in the company? Or how could we use your principles to build relationships internally in the company, not just to build relationships with the prospects we're going afterwards externally?
Yeah. Well, something simple that we do. I mean, if somebody interns for us, most people are like, hey, here's a jacket with our logo on it. I sent, during finals time, I'll send them a set of $200-$300 headphones saying, hey, know you need help blocking out the noise and studying for your test. I'll spend more on my interns than most people spend on their best 20-year clients or 20-year employees. I blow them away. And they're like, how could you spend $300? And I'm like, number one, I want them as an employee. What's your salary range for your average person that's entry level that's starting for you? Even in like the, like entry level communities, oftentimes it's 25, 35,000, 45, 55,000, 75, 85, like depending upon what city you're in, it's usually a $10,000 range. I take and we build in like something that we do for all of our employees, every single employee, not when they've been with this for 5 years or 10 years. Like that's so archaic. Like wait for somebody to give you 10 years of their life before you send them a gold pen set. Like how generic, how unappreciative, a great way to spend money and actually insult somebody, which is what most people do with their annual, like their service awards or 5-year, 10-year, 15-year gifts. But the employee is never going to tell you that. In their head, they're thinking, really, I got to pick from this catalog my own gift, and it's something I don't even really want. Like that's your way of showing gratitude for 5 years. Yeah, that's a soapbox. So for internal teams, yearly, when somebody comes on board, I'll send them a gift. I'll celebrate them as a person for joining our team. I don't wait for people to leave the company and then hold a party for them when they leave and go to your competitor or go to stay home as a mom or go to another company. Celebrate people when they come on board and then celebrate them year round. Like we send gifts to our employees throughout the year. We send gifts to their spouses throughout the year. We pay to have their house, like every employee, we pay every other week to have their houses cleaned. It costs us $2,000 per employee per year. And it gives us like $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in value. Like we don't ever lose employees because we ask ourselves, what would they really want that they'd never go buy for themselves? And a lot of our employees are stay-at-home moms. They're like have kids, husbands. They don't have enough hours in the day to do everything. So how do we make their lives better? How do we put ourselves in their shoes? If we gave them the option of more money or house cleaning, they'd always choose more money because they'd feel guilty about taking it. But we take that away. We say, hey, we're going to spoil you. We're going to make your life easier. It's going to cost us $2,000. It's a no-brainer. It's like even our employees' parents, some of them are doctors, and they're like, when they introduce their daughter to somebody, they're like, yeah, she works for this crazy gifting company, and they pay for her house cleaner. It's like become this like ripple effect of like people are finding out about us because of a $2,000 perk or benefit, but it's really a quality of life thing. And most people are like, oh, we can't afford to do that. I'm like, that's BS. You're offering a bunch of crap that nobody cares about. That's just baseline. And we're trying to find things that are really meaningful to their life and really being willing to invest in, not do some token thing or, we give them swag and we call it a gift. Like that's not a gift. It's a uniform. That's fine to give them a uniform, but don't act like your Under Armour jacket with your logo on it is a gift. It's not. Like it's once again, going back to trying to combine two things that are not the same. There's nothing wrong with them, but don't call it a gift. And yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
I'm sorry. I want
up.
you to keep going. I had an anticipatory breath because it's so poignant what you're saying. I didn't mean to interrupt you, man. It's
No,
so true. I
fire.
love that. It's not a gift. It's a uniform. I'm going to use that. I know exactly who I'm going to use that on. He's probably listening right now, and I'm going to text it to him after this is over.
Oh, I love it. It's I'm just trying to be honest with people. It's not to be mean. It's like, I think because gifting is one of the, like, everybody wants to be politically correct. Nobody writes a note and says, dear Mike, I actually thought less of you as a person when I received this gift from you. It really shows you don't know me at all, don't know me as a person. Like, you have those thoughts, but you'll never write it down to the person because that just feels mean and rude. But those are the things, like, I literally have people write to me every day and say, I will never do business with this vendor. Like, they earned a $60,000 fee off of me, and they sent me a $7 bottle of wine from Amazon with this printed out note. Like, that was their way to say thank you for, and like, just out of principle alone, I will never work with them again. That was like the cheapest, most unthoughtful thing on the planet. And they think they lost out because of price or some other random thing. They lost out because they disrespected me and they did something super unthoughtful. And I thought less of them as a vendor. Like, that's why they lost out.
Right.
But nobody ever hears those honest thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. You have such good ideas. I remember I went to a dad's retreat that you were at last year. And while I was gone, my wife received a Cutco knife in the mail. And there was a note, and it was engraved, and it did not say John Ruhlin or Ruhlin Group on it. It said this knife was handcrafted for the Mike and Melissa Merriam family. Yeah. And there was a note in the box, and the note said, thanks so much for letting Mike come and meet with us for a few days. We know it's hard not having him home, but hopefully he returns home a better husband and a better father because of what we're going to be discussing here. That was absolutely brilliant. And I'm always asking myself, how can I do something like that? I mean, that thought never even crossed my mind, but now that I saw it happen, it seems to be so basic. And so I'm guessing that a lot of people are watching this and saying, man, John really knows how to give gifts. What's your best advice for coming up with ideas, for coming up with, like, you have a million of them because that's what you do. But for us, how can we come up with what's the right gift to give and the right time to give it, especially when we're in an industry where people aren't really used to receiving gifts? What are your thoughts around how we can, best handle that and be creative?
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing. A lot of times when I speak, whether it's at Google or for like a local company, they're like, you can tell the audience is thinking, well, that's great for you, John. Like, this is what you do. Like, you must be born, like, your love language must be gift giving. Like, that's what they assume. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, I'm a farm boy. I grew up poor. And so it wasn't like I was around gift giving. My love language is actually words of affirmation. Like, it's not gift giving. And so what I'll say is I've spent 17 years thinking about how to be more thoughtful and who I can show gratitude to. And because I've worked what I call the gratitude muscle, whether you use the 5-minute journal and write down 3 people every day that you're grateful for, and after a year, most people, if they're honest, and they do 3 different people, are like, oh my gosh, I have 1,000 people that I need to say thank you to. People that believed in me, teachers, mentors, advisors, clients, referral sources. Like, most people, if they're successful in business, whether it's mortgage, real estate, oil and gas, if we're honest with ourselves, we're not there without a lot of people. And when you start to write down and identify who you're grateful for, and then you start to put in your mind or write down, like, what value have they brought to my life? And if you can put a dollar value, if it's a business relationship, and if you look out over 50 years, like, most of us are going to be in business for 50 years, whether we like it or not. Like, we're going to be working. And for me, the word retirement isn't in my vocabulary because I feel like from a faith perspective, like, I'm supposed to pour out to people till I die. Like, that's what my business is. That's what I think a lot of us have been called to do. And so I think that most people are not, I lost my complete train of thought there where I was going.
That's all right. I asked you about how do we be creative.
I got all excited. Yes. Yeah. So the creativity comes from practicing it every day is the bottom line. If you don't take the time to write down who you're grateful for and then write down the value that they bring to the table now, and if they're lifetime value, if you're not willing to take the time to think about it daily, like, and it goes for your spouse too. Like, guys will come to me and say, can you help me gift my wife? And I'm like, if you would just start like following her on Pinterest or following her on Facebook and listening and treating that relationship with the same intensity that you do your business, she's laying down all the ideas and needs and thoughts and how she wants to be gifted. Like we've just chosen to put our focus on fantasy football leagues and other crap that like it's fun, but it doesn't matter in the whole scheme of things. And if you put thought and intention to your relationships, and ask yourself questions that are in the book Giftology, but I'll give them to you. Like, what would they really want? How can I make this personalized? When would it mean the most to them? Who's their inner circle? Like, none of the thoughts are like rocket science, but if you start asking yourself those questions, I don't care. Even the most thoughtless person can become pretty thoughtful because the bar has been set so low that most people, like, in your industry, you're like, they're not used to receiving gifts. So you could actually be a pretty sucky gift giver, but because everybody else is like even suckier or doesn't do it at all, like you could actually stand out. Like we're in industries like, with billionaires or pro sports teams, like where they're giving gifts all the time. And like, you better be really good or you're not going to stand out. I think that if you're in an industry where everybody else is doing all these other things at a high level and gifting's really low, in my mind, that's one of the few levers that's left to, if you lined up 100 mortgage brokers in your area or even nationwide, it's one of the few things you could do to be different than the other 99 guys or gals. And so I love industries where it's notoriously bad. I also love my favorite clients are also the pro sports teams where I can go like all in and do crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, when the bar is really low and you start writing down who you're grateful for and start committing to it and say, I'm going to reinvest like a real number, like for us, we actually use real metrics. And I guarantee in a mortgage business, you're measuring all of these different things. What percentage of your net profit are you reinvesting into your relationships? For us and for most of our clients, it's a minimum of 5% of your net back into your key relationships. 5% of your net profits back in the people are like, man, that's a lot of money. I have some clients, like I talked to the casino, they're doing 16% of gross. Not net, 16% of gross is reinvested back into their top relationships. That's a lot of money. But guess what? They don't have a business unless people come back time and time again. And as a lender, all day long, you give me $1, I give you 20 back. Like how many times do you want to give me $1? Like if you're going to keep clients, 5% to keep 100% of your client base, to grow them and to turn them into sales advocates for you. Like I'm a small team, but I dominate people because all of my clients to become salespeople for me. Guys like you are like, John, I love what you're doing. I love what you did for my wife. Can you come and share and basically advertise your business to my entire tribe of 1,300 amazing mortgage brokers? Like, think about that. You became a salesperson for me. And all of us, we were like, oh, I don't have more referrals. Like, well, then turn your people and invest in them, love on them, inspire them to go become salespeople for you. You do that in an industry that sucks with gifting, like mortgage lending and real estate, and you'll melt people's faces off. They don't even know what to do. Like you'll have more business than you can possibly handle, period.
Wow, that's amazing. It's so true, and we definitely need to incorporate that. John, I'm going to get closing you out here soon, but I wanted you to do a couple of things. I want you to share a story with us, and I'm going to guide you through which one I think you might want to share. But I'm also going to give you the option to share whatever story you want. So, so I've heard a bunch of your stories before, and for those of you who aren't fortunate enough to know John Ruhlin and run in the same circles with him, you're missing out on some incredible stories. This guy's life is like a TV show. And so, John, you talk about this. I think it's the first chapter in Giftology, by the way. And let me just say that if you want more from John Ruhlin, you want to learn more about what he does and get some free coaching, pick up his book, Giftology. And John, you can share where people can receive that in just a second. Or if you want to work directly with John and actually hire John, John, why don't you share those two resources with people now before I forget? And then I'd love you to share this amazing story with the group after that.
Yeah. Well, before you hire us, I would say go download. We created a PDF that most people are like, they run away from pain more than they run towards pleasure. And so it's the 10 worst gifts to avoid giving. And it's things like gift cards and why don't send gift cards and why don't send food. And it's basically, most people are like, oh my gosh, you just named the top 10 things that we give. Like, that's great. Thank you for telling me they're the worst. But if you go to giftologybook.com/Hyatt, HYATT, they can go download it for free. The 10 worst gifts to avoid giving in an explanation. And that way they can at least take it to their marketing team and be like, okay, don't give gifts at the holidays and don't give any of these. And you'll be better than 99% of the people on the planet. If they do want to buy the book, I mean, there's no Giftology 2 coming out next year. So you don't have to worry like, oh, John's going to share like all of our playbook is in that book. And you can go to Amazon. It's $25. Amazon runs sales. Who knows? Maybe it's $19.07 right now. I don't know what the price point is. You can download on Audible. You can get on Kindle. All of those different places. But everything is in there on Amazon. Go check out the book there.
And then you have like a special gift version, right? So if somebody wanted to actually give Giftology as a gift to somebody else and teach them about that, don't you have a special like collector's edition, or how does that work?
Yeah. So we do have so my big belief is most people go as cheap as possible with the book. They spend like $1 on their book and they're bragging about it. And I'm like, one of the questions I talk about in the book is most people say, what's the least I can get away with? What's the least I can get away with my wife? What's the least I can get away with giving a gift to my significant or to my kids, whatever else? Our question is, what's the most I can do? What's the most I can do here? And so our first 50 books that we made were $200 a piece because they were handmade. They were personalized with a husband and wife's name of a mentor, advisor, a client, somebody that was really important to me. So like a Seth Godin or a Gary Vaynerchuk or a Michael Hyatt, you name it, they received a $200 version of the book. And most people are like, that's wasteful. That's stupid. Why would you ever do that? And I said, well, every week Amazon publishes like 30,000 books. And how many times have we bought a book and we have a stack of books people have given us at our office and we can't get through them all? When I give a book, it's my wisdom of like everything I know for 17 years. It's my legacy. My girls hopefully someday will read it. And you can buy that. I can invest $1 and be like everybody else, or I can invest $200 and make it the one book that they're going to read this week or this month or this year. And I've had guys like Michael Hyatt who literally get a few thousand books sent to them every single year, and all of them go to Goodwill. He said, John, it's the nicest book I've ever seen. And I was in publishing for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. He's like, I've never seen a book like this. So we now instead of 50, we're 1,000 of them at a time. And anytime I send a book out to somebody personally, I send this version of the book. It's inside a linen box. It's, monogrammed, whatever else. It's inside a leather bag. And then the book is like, we spend 300% more on the book alone, not including all the other things. And when somebody gets it, the likelihood of them actually reading it and taking it seriously and showing it off to other people goes up exponentially. And so it becomes my book stands out from everybody other book, and anybody could go do that. But most people are like, I'd rather spend my $1.75 on my book versus investing $200 in a book. And so that's the VIP version. If somebody, if somebody reaches out, downloads it, buys the regular version of the book, sends me the receipt, I'll pick. How many people should we pick, Mike, that will send the VIP version out to?
Oh man, you don't want to let me pick. I'll pick like 1,300. You better pick.
Okay.
John.
Okay. So if you buy the book, you prove that you downloaded the 10 worst gifts and you've bought the regular book. I'll pick at least 10 people to send out the crazy VIP version of Giftology.
Wow, that's awesome, John. Thank you. That's really generous, man.
Yeah. So just email info@ruhlingroup.com. Those two things to prove that you downloaded it and that you bought the book. And if you go to download the 10 worst gifts is giftologybook.com, all one word, giftology, then book /Hyatt, HYATT. But yeah, I'd love to send out some VIP version of the book. If I had my way, my business partners like John, like those 1,000 have to last us for at least a few months. Like we just had one event that we spoke at, a conscious capitalism event, and we surprised hundreds of attendees with that VIP version of the book afterwards. And like people are freaking out because they're like, it was totally, that I call it the exclamation point. The event's done. I spoke, we done gifts, and then all of a sudden the book showed up, and they're like, people are like, even some of these guys are Fortune 100 company like executives, and they're like, this is your book? Like this, like I'm actually going to read this thing. Like I'm curious enough that all the other books on the shelf are going to get put on hold for a second, and I'm going to read it. And I had one guy that emailed me this morning who just sold his company to a Fortune 300 company. He said, John, the packaging, that everything alone, he's like, it made me say I was going to read the first couple of chapters. In 30 minutes in, I decided I got to read the whole thing. And he listed off like, here's the 10 things I'm going to do differently as a direct result of the book. And I was like, this guy just sold his company for a lot of money. Like could be doing a lot of other things And he's telling me how he's going to incorporate giftology and how he wants to work with us. I was like, this is crazy, but it would have happened had it not been for us willing to go crazy with the version of the book.
Man, I love that. I love that. I'm gonna, I've been saying this for a long time, but this re-inspires me to incorporate a lot of the stuff you do into my world and to figure out how to do it compliantly, of course. But I know there's a way, right? Where there's a will. John, I'm going to close out with you, but I would love it if you would leave us with one of your amazing John Ruhlin stories. And so I'm going to give you two options here. And by the way, you can pick any other option that I didn't give you if neither one of these is what you want to share right now. But you have a story about how one gifting experience led to over $10 million in sales with Cameron Harold, who's an amazing guy. And so if you want to talk, maybe share that story with our group. The other option would be, this is more of a personal story. So depending on what kind of mood you're in, I remember hearing a story about how you proposed to your wife, which was one of the most amazing things I ever heard. And that's an option, or any other story that you think might be like a fun anecdote to share with us here in closing.
Yeah. So the engagement story is in the book, and I'll tell you that it's too long of a story probably to wrap up with in this setting. I do share it sometimes when I keynote, but that's when I'm given like an hour to speak and it's worked in. Like that's my like big closing. And I saw some questions on people are asking. The Audible book does count. If you buy the Audible, that's totally counts as a purchase. I know it's what, $10. So people are trying to figure out the cheapest book they can buy Audible obviously is great. So you can run and listen to it or travel easily. So about 10 years ago, I was at an event. I got invited to be a part of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, an amazing organization similar to YPO. And I just qualified, and somebody that owned 20 companies told me you should join this. So I'm like, I'm in. And he's like, you should go to Vegas at their conference as well. And I'm like, I'm in. And I'm like, when I got the bill for both of those, it was $10,000. I was like, wow, it costs a lot to network with high-level CEOs and entrepreneurs. So I go out to Vegas, and like there's 1,200 people. And the first event we go to is like Steve Wynn is speaking to us privately. And I'm like, wow, this is like, I almost left the conference literally after that meeting because I was like, I don't belong here. Like I'm not a big, like some of these guys own $500 million companies and I barely qualified to join the group. So I'm like, I remembered the $10,000 investment. I'm like, John, suck it up, go get $10,000 or more value from this event. And so I ended up going to this breakout, and I almost didn't go because the guy's bio was like, he grew a junk company to $100 million and whatever else. And I'm like, junk, that's about the unsexiest thing on the planet. But I went in, it was standing room only, and everything that came out of this guy's mouth, Cameron Harold, who wrote Double Double and Meetings Suck. He was COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK when they went from 2 million to 120 million in 5 years, no debt and no advertising budget. And I was like, everything he came out, I was like, I know I can't afford his $10,000 a month coaching. I can't afford anything from him, but I want him to be a mentor, an advisor, a client, everything. And so I'm thinking, man, it'd be great if he was coming to town. And I'm waiting in line to speak to him afterwards. And I find out he's coming to Cleveland 3 months later to speak to our group, EO. And I'm like, thinking, I look at the date. I'm like, the night before I have Cavs opening night tickets, LeBron's in town, like lower level seats. We're going to go to a steak dinner and a ball game. Like we're going to be buddies by the end of this night. That's what I'm thinking in my head. So I go up to Cameron. I'm like, hey, I hear you're coming to town. Are you coming in the night before? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, yes. And so I'm like, hey, I got great seats to Cavs game. You want to go watch LeBron, go to steak dinner? And I'm thinking he's going to like high five me or hug me or something and be like all excited. And he looked at his calendar. He's like, I guess I don't have anything else going on. I guess I'll go. And for me, it was like somebody kicked me in the gut and knocked the wind out of my sails. Because I'm thinking like, this is going to be my differentiator. And as I took a step back, I was like, duh, John, like, like a lot of your mortgage clients and everybody, they're going to go on 100 steak dinners every year. They're going to go to 100 ball games. Like if you're a dominant executive, you get offered free tickets and golf and games and dinners away from your all the time. That's not going to be the way to like blow somebody away. So I said, what else are you going to do when you're in town? I'm like grasping at straws. He said, I'm not really sure, but I think I'm going to go shopping. I'm like, this is my angle. And I said, where are you going to shop at? And he said, Brooks Brothers. It's one of my favorite stores. There's not a lot of them in Canada. I'm going to go buy a bunch of Brooks Brothers stuff. The dollar's really weak. I'm going to go crazy. And on the spot, I'm thinking, this is my angle. I said, I'm a Jose Bank guy. I want to send you a shirt. What's your shirt size? And he looks at me kind of like bewildered, like, does this dude have a man crush on me? Like, that's a really weird forward question to ask somebody within 2 minutes of meeting you. And but he was polite. He's from Canada. He told me the size. And so I said, great. Send you a shirt. We'll have a great time. So long story short, I called my business partner. He told me it was a stupid idea. No way could we do it. I hung up the phone. 3 months go by. The morning of, Cameron starts texting me. I'm going to be late. My flight's delayed. I think I'm going to miss my connection. Do you want to just cancel? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's trying to get out of this dinner and a ball game. He could give 2 rips about this game. So I'm like, no, whenever you get in, we'll just go for a drink. And he said, fine. So I called my partner back and I'm like, Rod, we have to do this. And his response was, do you believe in it enough that if it doesn't work, it comes out of your personal draw? And I had to think for probably a good 60 seconds because I was like, that's a lot of money to come out of a personal draw. And I said, you know what, Rod, I believe in it enough that it comes out of my personal draw if it blows up in our face. He said, all right, I think it's a super idea, but go for it. So before he could change his mind, I hang up, jump in the Suburban, drive an hour up to Cleveland, go to the Brooks Brothers, put down the Amex, put down the guy's sizes. And I said, I want one of everything in your new fall collection, all your jackets, pants, sweaters, jackets, suits, belts, you name it, all your colors, everything. And the junior sales associate looks at me and he's like, you're joking, right? And with a deadpan face, I'm like, I wish I was, but no, I want everything. And he's like, holy crap. All right, we'll get it all together. So it takes an hour to get everything up. They start ringing it up and they go to swipe the Amex. I'm like, please go through. And because I looked at the number on the bottom of the receipt to sign and it said $7,000. I was like, oh my gosh, this better work. So I load everything up into the Suburban, like takes up the whole car. I go over to the Ritz. I'm like, I asked for the GM. I'm like, one of the top business coaches in the entire world, guy coaches $20 billion CEOs is coming to town. Do you want to do something amazing? It's the Ritz. So what do they say? Sure. So I said, this is what I want. I want to merchandise the hotel room to look like a Brooks Brothers store, jackets there, sweaters there, pants. They're like, wow, we've never done that before, but yeah, we can do that. So we do it, merchandise it. We go down in the lobby. I'm like drinking like a triple on the rocks because I'm so nervous. And then my partner gets there and he's in my ear. He's like, you're just going to think you're a stalker. This is the worst idea ever. This is going to blow up at our faces. And I'm like sweating profusely because I'm so nervous. Cameron arrives. He's like, you can tell like he's not happy to see me. He just wants to go to bed. Like it's one of those horrible days traveling. And so I said, Cameron, go take a shower. Even if you come down and we miss half the game, who cares? He comes down 25 minutes later and he's glowing. And he's like, he floated out of the elevator. He said, John, I've had a lot of people do amazing things for me when I travel internationally, Dubai. He said, I've texted pictures to multiple authors already. I've texted pictures to my girlfriend, you name it. He said, whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want to talk about it, I'm all ears. I've never had anybody personalize an experience and make me feel the way you made me feel.
Wow. I get chills listening to that story, man. And I've heard it like 10 times. That's amazing. Yeah, so John, thank you so much. And for everyone listening, guys, this is just one of like 100 of these stories that John has that are just unbelievable. So again, go to giftologybook.com/Hyatt. He's got a free PDF about the worst gifts, the gifts not to give. His book, Giftology, is on Amazon. Email your receipt to info@ruhlingroup.com. That's RUHLIN, info@ruhlingroup.com. And John will give his VIP book experience out to up to like 10 people or at least 10 people. That's awesome, John. Thank you. And John, real quick, Juan asked if he can purchase the VIP experience and how to do that. You want to share that real quick before we go?
I never been asked that question before. It's way
to go, Juan.
Yeah, Juan, I would say email me at info@ruhlingroup and I'm sure we can arrange for you to buy the book. Normally I only give it as a gift, just how we kind of operate, but I like the boldness in asking, and I think the answer is yes.
Awesome. Hey, John, thank you so much. I know your time is extremely valuable. I can't thank you enough for being here and talking to us today. And if there's anything we can do for you, man, just reach out, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon, buddy.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Mike.
Anything else you want to share?
No, man. I think we covered at least a pretty good broad brushstroke of some of the core principles. So, man, it was awesome.
All right, great. Hey, everyone. Great seeing you this week. And we'll post everything we talked about in an email to you and here in the Facebook group. So thanks again. Take care.